welcome back to another episode of Signature Chefs of Orlando podcast. My name is Andrew Voss. I'm located on the beautiful Whisper Creek Farms on the Grand Lakes campus of the JW Marriott and the Ritz-Carlton. We're bringing you today the Feast of the Fire, and what Feast of the Fire is complete without whole meat cookery. But before we get into that, tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the executive sous chef on property here. I have 104 amazing culinarians that work on our team. My responsibilities are to oversee the day-to-day operations in conjunction with my executive chef. A little bit about my background. Before this previous position, I was the executive chef at the JW Marriott in Grand Rapids, Michigan. A little bit warmer down here, weather's a little bit nicer, and I also did my studies up in Michigan as well and spent a little time over in Europe post-culinary school. So with that all being said, I firmly believe in the processes of whole meat cookery and total utilization of animals, so that's what we are going to be focusing on today, and what better way to cook that particular animal than over some oak fires. So before we get into all that, I want to talk a little bit about this beautiful lamb that we have here in front of us. So this lamb was actually butchered fresh yesterday morning, so it's literally been sitting in our facilities less than 24 hours. Very fresh. The freshness of the meat, obviously, the better. We procured this from Florida Fresh Meats, which is right out of Ocala, about 25-30 minutes from here by drive. And we had the distinct pleasure of bringing this animal in whole, to which we've actually cut this into a half portion to kind of show you how to break this particular item down. So what we're going to actually do is, number one, when you talk about whole meat butchery, you want to be able to start with a very distinct plan of action on how you want to actually break this animal down. So we typically want to start at the front of the animal and then work our way back. That gives you a very clear defined methodology to how you're butchering and then what you should be cleaning off and where it should come from. So to start, we obviously want to start with a beautiful sharp boning knife as well as a steel. Just throw a fresh pair of gloves on here, and then I'm just going to start to show you some small little details you want to look for when you're procuring whole animals. So this is how the whole animal would come from the side. Okay, so you start. You've got the shoulder, you've got the shank in the forearm here. The shank, you've got the rib section, and then behind the rib section, you actually go into the loin, the belly aspect here, and then you've got the ham or the hind legs, the hindquarters. As we start butchering, what you're going to want to do is basically inspect the meat. First things you're looking for when you're inspecting the meat is freshness. The way that you tell freshness is obviously the texture of the meat itself. You want to make sure it's nice and dry to the touch. It's not sticky or tacky on the exterior. That the color is good. Lamb, as you can see from the exterior, should have this really nice kind of rosy pink characteristic to it. It's not like beef where it should have that really dark red hue to it. If it has a dark red color, that means your lamb is actually oxidized or aged. Which would then give off maybe a possibility of a level of not being fresh, okay? And then from the inside of the animal itself, and I'll flip this over one more time, the same thing holds true. You want to make sure that the meat itself is very soft or dry to the touch, and that the ribs are intact, and you can see there's this beautiful glossy shine to the ribs. If they start to look dried out, like too dry, or they start to oxidize a little bit, again, that's a sign of not being fresh. So what we're going to do is really the majority of all the butchery actually takes place on the interior of the lamb. This product you could get from your local butcher shop, and if you are going to go in and order that, you're going to be looking for basically a dressed half animal. What that means is dressed is they'll basically go in, they'll split it down the spine, they'll remove the head, they'll go in and they'll take out the interior, the offal, in that kind of product, and then what they're going to do is they're basically going to leave the cavity, the interior cavity, as it is. So from there is a little bit of butchery and trimming that will take place. So I'm just going to start on that now. So again, working from the shoulder up, one of the things you want to look for most importantly is this small little white fat that's called leaf lard. If you find leaf lard, you'll see it in the neck area. You want to just go in and trim this product out. Okay, looks like this. There is also a lymph node up top that you want to remove as well, which is right around the neck muscle. Okay, and you're going to go in and inspect. And this one's fairly clean. There's some more leaf lard here. Okay, take that product out. Now, when we've kind of inspected and see that we've got the majority of leaf lard around the neck section as well, what you want to do is then, we're working on the outside skirt steak. The outside skirt is actually this muscle here. You can see it's kind of a flap cavity. So what's going to happen when you cook this, if you don't actually remove this, is this product, and you can see there's a lot of sinew here, so it's going to get very tough. you want to remove this to make sure that, number one, this is not going to get overcooked, and it's not going to add a level of toughness or like a rubber band characteristic to it. So you're going to go in from the inside here, pulling up all the while. Okay, and you're going to remove that right out. Such as so. So if you wanted to go through the motions and actually butcher this out, you could. If you were getting, if you were butchering whole pork, the muscle products are fairly much the same, and actually this outside skirt steak on a whole pig is actually quite delicious. But for this purpose, we're actually going to just discard that, and then again, continuing to work our way back, clean out some of this leaf lard, and then you can see here this belly. This belly you can almost see through, it's so thin. So what I tend to recommend is, again, same thing, you just kind of go through and square this off. You don't want to go too far in the belly cavity, but this is product that, again, once it overcooks, it's going to get a little tough. So again, working our way back, and we're almost there on this. Just a couple more spots. Okay. And then also, one of the things you want to look for as you start to get into the hams or into the hindquarters is actually some of the main veins that run from the back side of the animal up to the head that you want to remove. These tend to get very tough. They have a very bitter characteristic due to the nature of the amount of blood that's still in the veins itself. So you want to go in and actually remove these. One more big one here. Okay, and then one more time we'll inspect here. We look really good. And now the tail, you can certainly remove the tail. I would recommend, what you want to do is the tail, you'll be able to feel on the tail that it goes down into the spinal cavity, and then it stops right about here, and then you can feel the individual bones from there that work their way out. There's about 5 or 6 of them. So what you want to actually do is go in, and at that 5th bone joint, right where it starts to bend, you're going to want to go in and remove this particular. Working around, let me grab my bigger knife here. Okay, like so. And then we're ready to string it up. So the grill that we're going to be using to cook this this whole animal on is actually called an asado a la Cruz. Asado is kind of a South American barbecue, much like an American barbecue. So where Americans call it, we're going to a barbecue. Could be a Sunday barbecue. If you're in South America, whether it's Venezuela, Uruguay, Argentina, it would be considered an asado. So this is an asado a la Cruz, otherwise known as a catering cross. And as you can see, Chef Brown here is giving me some assistance. And this is a great project to do with 2 people because, again, what better way to have a nice Sunday spent with friends, drinking beer and cooking whole animals, but then to have them assist with the process as well. So how you want to position these bars on your catering cross is you really want to go in and look at the animal in 3 different sections. You've got the shoulders, which you want to make sure are intact. You've got the belly region with the spine that you want to make sure is intact, and then of course you have the ham or the hind legs that you want to make sure there is intact as well. The way that we secure this, you basically will go through and you'll position these bars accordingly. I would start with the top, and you're going to want to lock that one in, and then from there, as you continue to string this, you're actually going to be stretching this animal. So I would recommend not securing the back too, because as we string this up in the front, we actually want to pull the animal as tight as possible to make sure that it's not drooping in the cooking process. Okay, so what we want to do as well is we're going to position, and you can see on these crosses themselves, there's actually holes in the middle of the support bars. Those holes are made basically there for you to be able to use baling wire. Our recommendations on baling wire you would use 16 gauge baling wire. It's heavy duty enough where it actually will pierce the meat, and you're able to manipulate it still, where it's not too heavy, where you're unable to manipulate it or tie it intact. Okay, so Chef, do you want to give me a hand doing this? If you want to start on the back, and I'll start on the front here. Now, when you're securing the front or hind legs, there's a main tendon that runs in the back. It's much the same tendons like the Achilles heel would be, that you want to make sure you're securing actually through that tendon and then around the bone. Okay, and then you just want to make sure you twist it off, maybe 5 or 6 times to secure it, and then we'll go back through and trim these once we have the whole animal secure here. And you can see what I'm doing as you're stringing it up. You want to make sure you're pulling the animal tight. You want to stretch it as much as possible. That's going to eliminate a lot of the movement from the animal as it's cooking. All right, so as we have this secure, then what you're gonna basically do is you're gonna take a pair of pliers and you're gonna go through and trim off the extra. My recommendation is then you would take the knot and basically twist that down so you know it's secure. Recommendations for seasoning. Classically, this would have a garlic, thyme, and salt spray that we would add on that's very traditional in Argentina. I'm going to show you how to make that here in a bit. If you wanted to go the route, our recommendation would be is that you use very simply kosher salt and pepper, no more. You don't need any extra rubs because all the flavor is going to come from the wood that you choose to cook on. So I'm going to bring this over to our fire. We've actually pre-built the fire over here on the catering cross setup. So as I come over here and build this, or excuse me, set this up, I'm going to explain a little bit about the fire and then we'll get back to the next section. So recommendations would be is that you start this with the body cavity side forward, okay? And as you can see, it's very suspended because that's we lock the top one in. Now as you're hanging the second one, what you want to do is basically take this bottom one and you want to stretch it down and pull it tight and then secure that. And then lastly, secure the center. Now what we want to do, pardon me, what we want to do is then we want to take and actually bend this towards the fire itself. The metal here is actually fairly pliable, so you want to bend it in. You want to make sure that you have about a 5-second variance, and what you're looking for is heat. Is you want to hold your hand near the body cavity and you want to hold it there for about 5 seconds. If you can hold it there for 5 seconds, the temperature is right on. If it's less than 5 seconds, it's too hot. If it's more than 5 seconds, then you want to make sure you adjust there accordingly. The fire itself, you want to make sure you're paying attention to wind patterns as well, and that the temperature is actually blowing into and not blowing away from the body cavity itself. Okay? The next thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing what's called a subprimal cut. A primal cut is the whole lamb, or the half of lamb that we're using. The subprimal cut is a portion of a whole animal, if you will. For beef, it's much different than it is lamb as far as the aging process is concerned. We are looking for age on our beef. Standard, industry standard, if you get wet aged beef, classically anything that you would buy at grocery stores is typically about a 28-day wet aged product. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a small amount off at a time, and you're basically just going to go through and work your way down. Okay, let's throw that away, and then you're going to go through and feel, and it's still pretty dense. So you're going to go in and you're going to take one more layer off. And layers, I'm going about 1/8 of an inch again on the same thickness all the way down. And then you can see that I'm stopping right here because I already know my fat cap is where I need it to be. So you're feeling we're getting close. One more layer I think is going to do it. Yep, perfect. Okay. So again, you can see we basically just took a little bit off, but you're looking at it like, oh, you didn't really do a whole lot to it. That's the idea. You really don't need to do a whole lot to it. You want to leave the fat intact on the top. And then in the bottom, you want to go basically through. And here you can see there's there is a pretty tremendous vein that actually runs along the backside here, or what they call the back strap. What you want to do is you actually want to go in and remove that, and if you don't remove that, what's going to happen is the actual product itself is going to shrink, it's going to pull itself in. Now the rib bones will actually help prevent that, but you still want to remove that product because it can be very tough. And that's just very simply, you go in the backside here, and you're basically just trimming this product out here, and you can see it just kind of comes off in one piece. And you're not going very deep because it's not very deep there at all, okay? And just a little off the top here, any fat that's necessarily hanging. Let's take that off. And that's about it. Okay, you can see I just basically took the strap off the back. The underside looks fairly clean. Some other chefs, and depending on their preference or what they've been trained, will tell you they want to remove a lot of that fat, and they might remove a lot of this fat on here and keep it clean. That's their preference, but again, for whole meat cookery and also or subprimal cookery and long roasting times, more fat is better, okay? Now what you want to do is, you can see on the end here, you can see the actual eye of fat that comes through. You want to use that as your guide. So what we're going to basically do is we're going to come down here and we're going to create a mark that runs along the bone line all the way down. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut this way, and then we're going to open it up. And you just insert slowly, you work your way back, okay? And as you can see, that initial cut, if you can get that in the shot, is I stopped about the same thickness that the top cap would be and that the bottom side would be. And the same thing goes if you go all the way through, or you go too far, you're gonna have a really thin strip in the center when you open this up that's gonna be very thin. That's gonna cook a lot faster. So you wanna make sure you have the same thickness from top end here where you stop your knife cut, and then on the bottom here as well, okay? So you're gonna use that as your guide, and then you're basically gonna work your way back, keeping in mind all the while that you're looking for a very consistent thickness all the way through. Okay, and as you can see, you start to cut, it opens itself up. Just go a little bit more. You can never uncut something, so I would suggest taking it slow, making sure you make nice, easy knife cuts, because if you go too far at one time, that's it. And for this particular cost of product, you want to make sure that you're getting exactly what you're looking for and you're not cutting too much. You want to make sure that you have enough support on this particular piece of meat. The reason is if you don't have a lot of those bones, or like with the whole lamb where you had the support of the tendons in the hindquarters or hind legs and forelegs and the front legs, those are really, really tough. But if you've got this meat, this beautiful succulent beef that once it starts to cook medium rare, the fat start to render, it can get a little pliable or malleable. So what you want to do is you make sure that you support this from end to end. If you were to have the fat cap, right, hanging on top, very heavy and dense, and the bottom half hanging on the bottom, what tends to happen is the top will rip and the beef will actually fall off. We know it's happened to us before, so you learn the hard way, right? So again, same process. You want to start by the top, secure the top one first, and then you've got your baling wire, the same wire that you used before. Feed it through. Yeah, and as you can see, Chef is doing if you have struggles pulling this product through the bones, you can use the pliers actually to help give you a little support there. Okay, stretch the product out. Now for this one, we're gonna take, because we know we're gonna stretch this already, so if you wanna just cheat a little bit, actually stretch this right in the board. Now this one, we are gonna do salt and pepper. I would tell you on this particular item, don't be quiet or don't be easy with the salt. It can definitely handle it. There's enough fat that as this cooks, you're actually gonna get a little base that's gonna happen. So some of you might be looking at this, wow, that's a lot of salt, but I promise you, as you can see in the cooking process, it actually is gonna work out quite great. Some fresh cracked black pepper over the top. And classically, it would just be salt and pepper on a lot of these products. It really doesn't need it to be any more than that, and I think you'll kind of see as the product comes out, it gets this great caramelization to it. It really doesn't need a lot of extra rub. Okay, that's about it. And then one more time, we're going to actually transfer it over to the fire here. We're going to start with the inside first. And we'll bring this over, set this on, and what you're going to want to do is actually move the lamb out of the way and bend the beef in at the same time. And you'll see it forms a cross, or a teepee. That's great because it actually captures the heat. All right? Next, you're gonna laugh how simple this is, but I promise you, this is very classical. We actually have a very talented Argentinian chef you're gonna see in one of the similar podcasts that actually has a recipe that his grandmother used to make. So it doesn't get any more authentic than that. So what you're looking for, 2 cups of water. The water process is actually used, so it's much like baking bread. Water and the steam in a bread baking actually releases and forms a crust on the outside. It's the exact same process. When the intensity of the heat hits with the water, it combines to form steam. The steam will actually release and start to create this great crust on the exterior. So that's really what you're looking for. 2 cups of water to start, 2 tablespoons of salt in the pot, 2 sprigs of thyme, which are actually just picked here right on property, and then 4 cloves of garlic. What I would definitely recommend for the garlic is that you maybe just give it a little hit with a knife here, excuse me, just to break some of the natural oils out of the garlic itself and add that in. And then the process is you're gonna bring this up to a simmer. Once this gets to a simmer, you're gonna cool it down, you're gonna strain it, and then you're just gonna transfer it to a squeeze bottle. And that's it. And then 30 minutes through the cooking process of the whole lamb, you actually wanna be spritzing this quite religiously, because again, we didn't season the lamb itself, so it's important that we make sure that we have a good amount of saltiness on the outside. What I'm gonna come back to next is I'm gonna be actually taking the protein off of the catering crosses, showing you how to butcher it and present it properly for our grand feast. So thank you very much. I'll see you back here in a little bit. All right, now for the best part. The meat is done. The bone-in ribeye spent about an hour and a half over the heat. We rotated it every 35 to 40 minutes. No extra base, no extra sauce. We want to let the flavors of the meat speak for itself. So the way that we're going to take this off is pretty much the opposite of how we put it on. So we're going to start by snipping all of the wires. And we're basically just going to open this up, pull this off. And in the cooking process, what you want to do also is as you start to get closer to the meat being done, and our recommendation for a finished product would be about 120 degrees. It's going to rest an additional 5 to give it to about 125, which is a perfect medium rare. So when you temp the meat and you're at about 120 degrees, recommendations would be is like we talked about when you actually lean the meat forward, bend the meat back so it's farther away from the fire, and that gives it the rest time that it needs. So when you go to carve this, it's not going to bleed out all over the table. We're about to cut the beef here. So much like we kind of butterflied this, what you're going to want to do is just slice this right down the center. Again, very sharp knife is key. And then you've got the beautiful top of the ribeye that we're going to let sit there for a second. And then you have these beautiful rib bones. Look at that, that's caramelization's gorgeous. A beautiful basted characteristic, and again, the fat rendered off, so it basted as it cooks. So recommendation for cutting these, plate these separate for some beautiful beef ribs. So, and again, you're gonna wanna use the ribs as your guide. So I would stay right along the right side of the rib and just cut through. Look at that. That's gorgeous, right? It's fantastic. So cooked perfect. So you wanna just continue to cut through using the ribs as your guide. I'm getting hungry just looking at this. All right, here we go. And then basically just beautifully lay these out on the plate. Family style service. So it doesn't have to be glitzy and glamour. It can be definitely rustic. Nice big pile of meat there. And then some beautiful chimichurri sauce to finish this off. Oh yeah, nice. Okay. Now the top of the rib, you're gonna check. There's typically is gonna be this this fattier characteristic, or the fatty the tail on the rib. We usually trim a touch of that. You can see it's kind of a lot of fat. A good amount of fat's okay. There's nothing wrong with that at all. but some of this stuff gets a little intense. And then you can do a couple different ways. You can just slice steaks like this, or you can go down the center. I'm just gonna slice big steaks. Oh yeah, look at that, perfect. Had a nice amount of time to rest. You can see it's not bleeding out. One more. All right. Now, again, very simple. Just lay these right out on the plate. Let me turn it so you can see this fantastic cooked ribeye. All right, gorgeous, right? And then one final one. And you can see one bone-in ribeye, if you were to cut this down the center, is gonna feed a lot of people. I mean, these are 1-inch thick steaks. I mean, this is definitely a lot of meat here. And then again, some chimichurri right over the top. Don't be scared of the chimichurri, great flavor. Gorgeous. All right, now recommendations for this. You could remove the ham on this. You could cut the ribs. You can go after the shoulders and break the shoulders down. My suggestion would be is serve it like this. Why not, right? So you got an amazing whole animal feast. Let's feature the whole animal, and then the grill master, the gaucho, whoever is actually taking care of your traditional Southern American style barbecue is going to be the one that would traditionally bring this to the table as like the piece de resistance, you know, like the end masterpiece of the whole meal. This kind of rounds everything together and all the sides and all that. So suggestion, serve it like this and you can't go wrong. Enjoy. Thank you so much for watching Signature Chefs of Orlando. We appreciate it, and I know it's from our chefs in our house to yours. Enjoy your feast.